You're listening to the Popcorn Conspiracy on centralcoastradio.com. We thought it would actually be a little bit fun while there's not a lot of films coming out in cinemas at the moment to take a look at some of our favorite soundtracks of all time. As you'll know, all the songs that we play on this show are from soundtracks of movies. So we thought today would actually go around the table and spend a little bit of time talking to each other about what our favorite soundtracks are, and then playing a track in between each one where we actually take a listen to a song from one of those soundtracks that someone's just talked about. So let's kick it off. Kyle, what are some of your favorite soundtracks and why?
Uh, well, I've got a couple of them. This is because I'm such a fan of movies, and so it's really hard to sum a few of them up. Like a lot of them are really have to do with the score. Like I really love soundtracks from Hans Zimmer's work on particularly his the movies that he's worked on with Christopher Nolan. Like those are soundtracks that I play all the time. A lot of Quentin Tarantino's soundtracks I really like, of course, but I mean that's almost cheating. But two of my favorites are one would be the Mission Impossible soundtrack from the very first movie. That one, yeah, that was one of my one of my favorite albums when I was growing up, and it's funny because that was the first soundtrack that I realized, like watching, listening to it, that um it was one of those music from and inspired by the movies. So it was one of the like there's 15 tracks on the CD, but there's only five tracks on it that are actually in the movie. Like the rest of them are just like completely created or ones that have been sourced for the album. Um, but that was one that I really enjoyed. But I really do think that my absolute favorite, like, and one that's kind of a big deal for me would be the Mortal Kombat soundtrack. If I talk about video game movies and stuff like that, because the soundtrack for the first Mortal Kombat movie, that was actually the very first album that I ever had. That was the first album that I ever had when I was a kid, and I used to play it over and over and over and over again. And yeah, it's one that I used to just pop on all the time as a kid, just listen to endlessly. Like the main track from the movie, the Techno Syndrome by the Immortals. That's so popular. It's become so ridiculously successful that it's pretty much become a meme at this point. Like it was
Yep.
remade. Yeah, I mean it was remade for the sequel, and it was Mortal Kombat Annihilation. It was also redone again for the 2021 reboot because it was so successful, and it's so like
And
it's
that's
so
funny because it was so of the time, like of that
yeah.
moment. It was so well done, and who'd have thought it would carry on till now with such a legacy? And with the legacy, I think the meme about it is like people try to remember the song and they end up thinking about like Two Unlimited, like one of
Yeah,
their like songs, like No Limits or whatever it
yeah,
was.
yeah. It's like 25 years later,
Yeah.
and even though it's a completely different movie, it's like nobody could imagine them doing a Mortal Kombat movie without this song in it. Like
Yeah, yeah.
you've got to do a new version of this song in this movie. You can't not do it. Um, I don't think any of the follow-up versions lived up to the original though, but
No.
like yeah, like the album, it had so much great like electronic dance music in it and rock music, and I think a lot of the songs really enhance the actual the fight scenes throughout the movie because they're so unique, and yeah, they really kind of they stand out. Like I'm not 100% sure. I think that whether Paul W.S. Anderson was a music video director before he was before he worked on films, but it really did feel like one of those it really did feel like one of those deals where That's why the
Yeah,
music
some of
works so
the,
well.
especially in Annihilation, I kind of remember there were these fight sequences. Actually, it might have been in the first one as well. It was just kind of like dance fighting, like they weren't
Oh
hitting
yeah.
each other. They were just like roundhousing at each other for 5 minutes, and it's
Yeah.
like just to play with the soundtrack, and it's just like, what the hell is going
Yeah.
on here?
The one during the song, I wish I could remember the name of the song. That plays during the fight between Liu Kang and Reptile.
Yeah, yeah,
That entire scene I think was just added because like so long had gone in the movie without there being a fight scene. So like when you watch it knowing that, you think, well, yeah, it's just suddenly they're walking along. There's just a giant fight with just pumping music playing,
yeah.
and then like, okay, he's dead. Okay, back, and like suddenly this thing that's not a person at all in the movie turns into a fighter just for that
Yeah.
one moment, just so you can
This is
fight. Just
this little lizard or something crawls into a
yeah,
statue and turns into a
yeah.
ninja. It's like, what?
And it's like the music for that was just great. And yeah,
And
so
it really was like just like a dance music video. Like they could have just filmed that to be like
yeah.
a music video to sell like to sell a
Do,
track,
do,
but
do,
not
do, do,
yeah.
do. Like that. It's in my head right now, just thinking about it. Yeah, like I mean the soundtrack, it's actually it's in the Guinness World Records as the most successful video game spin-off soundtrack, and it was the first I believe the first electronic dance music dance soundtrack the first electronic dance music album to receive a platinum rating in the United States for selling like 1 million units. So yeah, like it's kind of like it really is kind of like a historic soundtrack. So yeah, that's definitely my favorite one.
All right, well, we're going to take a listen to one of the tracks from Kyle's favorite soundtracks right now, and we'll be back straight after that. And Lee's going to step up to the microphone and talk about her favorite soundtracks. And welcome back to centralcoastradio.com. You're listening to the Popcorn Conspiracy. And at the moment, we're spending the time when there's less films coming out at the moment to take a look at some of our favorite movie soundtracks. And now Lee is going to tell us what her favorite movie soundtracks are and why.
Well, I love music, so this was a little bit hard to choose from. So many soundtracks out there. So I've picked a few. And the first one I'm going to start with is probably going to be a bit unexpected, but I love the Shrek movie soundtrack. It's full of fun. Songs like Accidentally in Love. It's so much fun. I'm a believer. Hallelujah. It reminds you of the movie itself, of course, and you can picture the characters in the movie as you sing along. So
that one there's called My Beloved Monster. Was that the track that you played for me at our wedding?
Maybe. Yeah, it's great for kids, I think, too, just having it in the car. I used to babysit a lot, and I used to have the CD on in the car with all the kids and just sing along with everyone. So it's got some good memories there.
Actually, we did have a Shrek song at our wedding.
I'm sure we did.
Yeah.
But yeah, from there, another kids one that I kind of like is Sing. That is also full of fun. I really like it. There's songs like I Don't Wanna Shake It Off, Let's Face and Dance, and Music and Dance. Something Good. It's just really good. Oh no, I've mixed it up. Have I mixed it up? I think I'm okay. Yeah, there's just too many. I've written down so many. It's so confusing. Rocket Man. Basically, let's be honest, it's all Elton John.
Yeah.
Who could not have fun with that?
I have to say that was pretty well done the way they did it, turning it into his story, but his songs come out in it. Like even if you didn't originally care so much about his music, you get carried into it so well through that film.
Yeah. I thought Elvis did that well too.
Definitely. definitely. And you've got the ones. Honestly, I cannot watch a musical and not sing along in the cinema, even if I'm doing it very, very quietly. When you've got songs
Agreed.
like Tiny Dancer, and I love that song. Whenever that's on, it's just brilliant. But then the things like Crocodile Rock, like how can you not sing along to that in the cinema? Saturday Night's All Right, like your songs, what a beautiful song that is. I cannot sit there and not sing. So I apologize to all the people around me in the cinema, because when a great musical comes on, I'm there, I'm singing along. Les Mis is another one. Just the depth of the music, because it's such a theatrical piece. There's beautiful harmonies. There's the big sound of a big orchestra. And yeah, you just can't go wrong with that kind of music. I Dreamed a Dream. Master of the House, that's a little bit fun as well. But I have to say, probably my all-time favorite at the moment is The Greatest Showman. Now that music was written for the movie, and I could not believe the quality of all the music for that musical at the time. Now, whether people agree that the characters in real life were that lovely or they were really horrible, which it seems like they were actually really horrible.
Horrible, yeah.
Yeah, it's not an agreement about the morals of the movie, but the music of the movie is brilliant. Songs like The Other Side with Zac Efron and Hugh Jackman, I play that over and over and over and sing along with that. Just the pace of it, the harmonies in it. And then you've got songs like Never Enough, which is really, belting it out and high pitched. From Now On, Million Dreams, it's just full of great, great music. And I can just play it over and over and over.
And she does.
And I do. And I make Dave listen to it as well. And This Is Me, that is another one. I just belt it out. So poor Dave, he has to listen to I still have a CD player in my car. I will not give that up. When I buy a new car, it has to have a CD player, even though you're with the high tech as well. Dave's always looking on the Spotify, and I'm like, where's my CD? I've got to have the real thing. So, yes, so I drive around over and over and drive him crazy with it.
And I changed the lyrics to match what it would have been like in real life. So I've changed songs to I just killed my elephant and things like that. So
oh no.
but that is Lee's favorite soundtrack. So we're going to take a track right now from one of Lee's favorite soundtracks, and we'll be back straight afterwards with Harley talking about his favorite soundtracks. And welcome back to the Popcorn Conspiracy on centralcoastradio.com. We are right in the middle right now of taking a look at each of our favorite soundtracks, and it is Harley's turn to step up to the mic right now. So Harley, what are some of your favorite soundtracks and why?
It's such a hard one for me because music has always been a part of everything. Like I remember as a tiny, tiny child, I loved watching the Star Wars movies over and over and over. So those soundtracks, they just get stuck in my head. I mean, you got the same composer doing the Superman movies with Christopher Reeves at the time. So, that kind of blends in for me. There was a certain sound of the early 80s that is in that sort of score to these movies that has this large presence. Exactly. All right. But yeah, I was thinking back, and two of the early ones I loved were musicals. I remember as a little kid seeing The Sound of Music, and I've seen that so many times in my life now, not just the movie, but I've seen on stage productions of it. That's always had a place in my heart, and I kind of just sort of know it back to front now. And I've sort of seen a bit of the history, how it started as the musical on stage and how that totally got transformed into what we now know as the movie and everything. But another one I loved, I was so keen on Michael Jackson growing up that I used to see The Wiz,
Yep.
which I thought was fantastic. That I don't know, I just loved that so much. I loved The Wizard of Oz as well. So seeing this other version called The Wiz with Michael Jackson and Diana Ross, and that was just like epic for me. I remember just Ease on Down the Road and stuff like that was fantastic. But Michael Jackson again, like his whole Bad album was basically like a soundtrack to Moonwalker, if
Yeah.
anyone remembers that. I used to love that film, and I didn't realize how like short it was. Because like, you get the video and it's packaged with all these music video clips of, the songs from that album and beforehand, and it's like, oh wow, I sat through so much music videos, and then we got to a feature that was really quite short. But just that power of imagination he has is like phenomenal. But yeah, my choice of music gets so mixed up because there are so many different things, and a lot of it was in my childhood. Like I realized what the first album I ever got. Well, maybe not the first. I think I probably did have like own a copy of Michael Jackson's Bad or something. But I I remember buying the soundtrack on cassette of Young Einstein. Does anyone remember that?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yahoo
Yes.
Serious?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was obsessed with that. I used to play that thing over and over, and I'd totally forgotten about it. I've still got the cassette somewhere, and I'd totally forgotten about it until a couple of minutes before we started recording this. And good times. But yeah, I grew up watching a lot of those sort of midday movies and things, and they would end up being musicals. Like I
Yeah.
remember watching Marilyn Monroe and Jane Russell in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. And, I love that kind of stuff. That's fantastic. And then 1986 was quite pivotal for me because it was the year that Transformers the movie came out. And I loved that so much. And I had no concept that there was a soundtrack out there I could buy because I didn't know the song names or who was singing them or anything. And it wasn't until about 12 years later that I found in HMV, which is no longer around, the soundtrack was there. And I thought, oh my God, I've wanted this all my life. And I have not stopped playing it since. That's one of my all-time favorites. But growing up, I found there's a few other things I came across. Now, my interest in cinema started developing far beyond the Western. So I'd watch a lot of movies from Japan, China, all across the world. And my favorite director probably is Wong Kar-wai from Hong Kong. And he had a film called Fallen Angels, but the soundtrack for that is largely made up of, I'd say, American music predominantly. It's like songs and ballads from anywhere from like the 60s up till the 90s sort of thing. It's a strange mix of different kinds of music in there, but it just is such a perfect soundtrack because you recognize what you're hearing immediately for most of them while you're watching this film, and it gives an interesting color. But if we're going to go for a favorite, I'm going to have to say there's a German film named Bandits, and that is going to be my absolute favorite soundtrack. I will never stop listening to that. The actresses in the movie actually all had musical skills, and one of them actually learned a whole new instrument for the film, and they formed a band, and they even toured as this band for a few shows. Um, so basically, the premise of the film is that they're all in prison, and three of them are in a band in the prison, and then this new one comes along who was in a jazz band. And despite having a rocky start, they decide to include her in their band, and they get an opportunity to perform at one of these like policemen's balls or something, and things go awry and they end up going on the run. And while they're on the run, they decide to make themselves super popular, and the whole German public falls in love with them. They want to see their spontaneous concerts that pop up while they're trying to run from the police and escape the country. So that, I don't know, the music, the story, everything about it, I loved it. So this is my favorite soundtrack is Bandits.
Awesome. So now we're going to take a listen to one of Harley's favorite tracks. Now you're on the Popcorn Conspiracy on centralcoastradio.com. And coming up next, we'll take a look at my favorite soundtracks. And welcome back. You're on centralcoastradio.com and you're listening to the Popcorn Conspiracy. We've been taking a look at our favorite soundtracks from over the years, and now it's my turn. Well, I have a really wide range of music that I love, so my soundtracks are all over the place as well. Some of the ones I wanted to mention at the start, though, are ones that are probably too heavy for us to play at this time slot. So I really love the Spawn soundtrack that came out in 1997. And the reason I liked that was because they actually got electronica artists to team up with heavy metal artists to re-record their songs. So you've got this amazing tracks like Can't You Trip Like I Do, which was Filter teaming up with the Crystal Method. Marilyn Manson
I used
teamed
to
up.
love that. Yeah.
Yeah, Marilyn Manson teamed up with the Sneaker Pimps. You got Orbital and Metallica teaming up. Metallica and DJ Spooky do a track. Korn and the Dust Brothers. There's so many great ones on there. But I've always loved soundtracks that do things a little bit differently. So I really like the Not Another Teen Movie soundtrack, which was a parody film of 80s coming of age films. So what they actually did was they got modern day bands to record tracks from those films. So you've got Goldfinger doing 99 Red Balloons, Stabbing Westward doing Bizarre Love Triangle, and stuff like that. And it just worked so well with what they were doing with the film. I also love the Queen of the Damned soundtrack, which in a way that film is a musical because Lestat is the singing vampire who's the lead singer of a heavy metal band. And when they were putting the film together, they said, hey, you know what, it'd be really, really awesome if we actually had songs for Lestat that was original. So they got Jonathan Davis from Korn to write a whole bunch of tracks. And then instead of Korn doing them, he went and teamed up with a bunch of other heavy metal artists. So I think Marilyn Manson does a song on there. Linkin Park do a song. Not Stabbing Westward. Static X do a song on there. So you've got all these amazing original metal bands coming on doing original songs that Jonathan Davis wrote. But
I can't believe I didn't mention that. I had one of the songs going over and over in my head for 2 days, and I was walking around singing it everywhere. God.
But this will show like the range of my musical taste. Like I also love the Moulin Rouge soundtrack. That is one of my favorite soundtracks. I just love what they did with that soundtrack. I don't think any of us knew that Nicole Kidman and Ewan McGregor could sing until they did that soundtrack, and it was
no, we knew Ewan McGregor. He did what was
Life Less
that
Ordinary?
movie?
I think it was singing in that, or
yeah, a little bit.
Was
Yeah,
it that one?
Yeah.
I thought it was another. Was it Velvet
oh,
Goldmine? Was that
yeah,
him? No.
yeah, that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
but Baz Luhrmann puts together brilliant soundtracks. The soundtrack for William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet is absolutely amazing as well. It's like got bands like Garbage that were really big at that time, but then he went away and also got underground American bands to do tracks for that. I also really love the Cruel Intentions soundtrack. I think that's still today one of the highest selling soundtracks of all time. So many amazing tracks on that became singles. And again, a wide variety of artists doing tracks for it. You had everybody from Fatboy Slim, Placebo. It was just one of those soundtracks. It's got one of my favorite tracks on of all time as well, which I go back to time and time again. The track that's playing when Sebastian comes up the escalators at the train station. It's just such an amazing album. When you go back and listen to it, you can never fail to remember what scene every track was from in that film. The other filmmaker out there that I think makes amazing soundtracks, and he's made two of my favorites, is Danny Boyle. His Trainspotting soundtrack was amazing, and he teamed up with Irvin Welsh. Irvin Welsh talked to him a lot about the tracks that he was listening to at that time, because if people don't know, Irvin Welsh based a lot of Trainspotting on his own personal life. So there's a lot of tracks in there that Irvin Welsh was listening to at that time, but also tracks that he was listening to when he was writing the Trainspotting novel. And Danny Boyle teamed up with him and put some of his favorites in there. And the soundtrack ended up having so many tracks. They did a volume 1 and a volume 2. And some of the tracks on volume 2 were actually the tracks that Danny Boyle couldn't fit into the film, but were inspiring him when he was working on it. The other Danny Boyle soundtrack that I really love is The Beach. Again, Danny Boyle went out and found some of the best electronica artists in the world and used their tracks. And it was really funny. I still remember why I bought that soundtrack. The trailer for The Beach had this song on it by an artist called Vast. And I fell in love with the track the first time I ever saw the trailer. And then it was in the film. So I remember going to see the film at the cinemas in Dandenong. I walked straight out of the cinema, walked around the corner to Sanity and bought the soundtrack, and then got home and was absolutely devastated that the track from Vast wasn't on the soundtrack. There was all these amazing tracks, but that track wasn't on there, and I was absolutely devastated that it happened.
Was it Touched?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was the first time I'd
that
ever
is the
heard.
best track ever.
Yeah. And then I heard it in an episode of Angel as well. They used it in an episode of Angel, and then I ended up hunting down Vast's actual album, and I was all happy after that because, yeah, I finally had it. The other soundtrack that's out there, and I guess it's not a movie soundtrack, but it's a TV show soundtrack in a way, but it does have films that has tracks from it as well. It's an album called Songs in the Key of X, and they were all songs that inspired Chris Carter when he was writing the X-Files movies and TV series. But
I remember that,
yeah, like you've got some really, really obscure songs on there from bands like Soul Coughing, Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds are on there. But there's a couple of tracks, really, really hard to find tracks that featured on there. But yeah, just an amazing soundtrack. And I guess it scrapes in because, yeah, some of the tracks are from the X-File movies that are on there. But yeah, they would be my favorite soundtracks, I guess. And now we're going to take a listen to one of the tracks off one of my favorite soundtracks. You're listening to the Popcorn Conspiracy on centralcoastradio.com.